Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me tonight. This is Brother T. I'm back with you this Thursday night, February 6th, and we're going to continue our journey into A Course in Miracles. This is an exciting time for me personally to spend with you every week as we entered the new year. I think it's so relevant for our time to be back in discussion of A Course in Miracles. I say back in discussion because it's been around for 50 years. And I've met and know people who have been studying this literally since the 70s and certainly in the 80s. But it's still fresh for some people. And certainly this curriculum is new for some people. We're going to be studying the Course in Miracles, your text version, which is the Course in Miracles Society version, if you will. You can find it at jcim.net. If you want to purchase a copy, you can actually read it online there. But this is the original version. There were parts of it that had been removed when it was brought to the world through the Foundation for Inner Peace, which was the version that was published in around the mid-70s. And there were people, Ken Wapnick was working with Helen Schachtman, who had been the scribe that Jesus had contacted and was communicating through her. So that's really what we, where we're at today is 50 years later. So it's been an amazing journey, a little bit more than 50 years now. And millions of copies have been sold. If you're new to A Course in Miracles, I just encourage you to, I'm going to say, be brave on one hand. On the other hand, a lot of people have been frustrated with the way, at least that have shared with me, that the way that it's written. It's written in Shakespearean iambic pentameter. And so we don't speak that way, so to speak, in our Western culture. But it was intentional because this is a teaching that was intended to be taken slowly, if you will, over some time. So we're actually going through the textbook here on Thursday nights through this live streaming session here on our YouTube channel. And it's really can take years to really get through it. But you can go at whatever pace you care to. I will tell you that I'm also covering the workbook lessons. The workbook is the second book. There's a textbook, and then there is the workbook. So the third book is the Manual for Teachers, and we'll be bringing some of that into our discussion, I'm sure, as we go throughout the year here, or maybe the next couple of years, depending on how things go. But the workbook lessons, I'm doing those on a podcast version every morning. I try to get it done by 11:30 so that it's up, that I get started and we actually have a conversation by 11:30 and go through the workbook lessons. Today was day 37 of the new year, 2020. And so today we covered lesson 37. There's been a couple of days that I've missed because of my work schedule, but I'll make those up, and I'm hoping to create a separate website where they'll be archived, and I'll redo those sessions that I missed. But basically what I do there is I read the workbook lesson just as it is without hardly any comment. And then I just kind of unpack it and add hopefully a little context to that. And I pull from the textbook what we're studying here together to kind of supplement the conversation, if you will. And you can find a link to that on my Facebook page. It's called facebook.com/ it's called Course Mastery, COURSE Mastery. So if you go to facebook.com/ Course Mastery, you should be able to join my fan page there. If you like the page, and based on your attributes for your Facebook account, you'll get notification of the posts that I leave. And I try to leave a post there. Sometimes it's just 5 or 10 minutes before I start the session, depending on how my morning's going. But I'm doing that for as many people that would need that, hopefully. But it is archived there. Once you get to blogtalkradio.com, Course Mastery is another way to get there directly, or to search on that site, blogtalkradio.com, for the best hour. You can find me there as well. But anyway, they're recorded. The ones that I've done have been recorded there on a podcast system, and you can grab those there. So I think it's good to have both the lessons going along with the textbook. One of the things I recommend to my students most of the time is that kind of follow along with me is, if you can, that for at least your first year to just focus on A Course in Miracles. I know that there's a lot of other material that's out there, but much of that other material is really in support of this curriculum. And several years ago, it was given to me to share this as this is really the graduate study of spirituality, is what I call it. So as the graduate study of spirituality, if you are really devoted to your spiritual journey and awakening in this life, and I used to think it wasn't possible, but now I know it absolutely is, especially in the time that we're in now. We're in a new energy on our planet. Things are changing. Have you noticed? Things are changing very quickly. And as things continue to change, this will be our opportunity to, be on the leading edge, if you will, of the changes in our world, and to be available to help other people, because there's going to be some things that we'll be going through that are kind of teed up, so to speak, that will have an impact on how we experience the world. And I think for the most part, we need to, all of us need to be as prepared as we can to help other people, because we're here really, to serve other people. That was part of what we discovered through the textbooks, the lessons that we've been studying this year. So over the last few weeks, we've been studying this book, right? And we started out in the first chapter, and we finished up last week with there are 53 principles of miracles, and we might be able to get through the end of the first chapter tonight. But the 53 principles of miracles, that we have been able to get through so far were through the first 52. So we're on page 15 of the chapter 1, and we're just going to kind of read along, and I just add a little commentary. Sometimes as we get a little deeper into our session, I find that I'm inspired to share, maybe some anecdotal stories or just some explanation about some of the stuff that we're reading. As I mentioned, it's written in Shakespearean iambic pentameter, and I just try to help unpack that a little bit to try to help build a foundation so that you can understand, what is being told to us here. Once you get the foundational pieces of it, however, it'll jump off the page at you and for you. And it is a self-study course, no doubt. But I'm just here to be truly helpful if in any small way that I can. And of course, I get to read this course again with you. I remember the first year I started studying this, I was so excited about it that I dedicated my first year with it, and I read the textbook 5 times that first year. And after I read it 3 or 4 times, I really began to feel that I had some understanding of what it was trying to teach me. And I hope in some small way, again, that through this year, if this is your first year with A Course in Miracles, that I can be of some service to you, and that it'll be a companion of yours like it has been of mine for years and years to come, because it is truly a divinely inspired teaching, and it's the teaching for our time today, and again, more relevant than ever as the graduate study of spirituality. So let's just jump right in. I want to start with lesson 53 on the bottom of page 15, paragraph 98. The miracle, and we've defined a miracle at this point as a sudden shift of perception. And we will hold true to that definition, because that's what's been taught to me personally in my studies through some channeled work from Jesus, who's been teaching through other people and teaching A Course in Miracles. So what I'm sharing with you here, to the best of my ability, is what I've gained from what he's been teaching about this teaching that he wrote. And it's an ongoing discussion in many corners of our globe. And there's a lot available, and I'm just here to help out again if I can be, for those who find us here on YouTube. The miracle compares what man has made with the higher level creation, accepting what is in accord as true and rejecting the discord as false. I want to speak to that, just to unpack it briefly, to say that a miracle is a shift of perception. And so we're shifting out of the perception of being alone and separate, and that we could say would be the human ego personality self. And we are shifting our perception, almost like a dimensional shift. Something that we could relate to would be when we fall off to sleep. We have a dimensional shift and our perception changes, right? We might be safe at home in bed and be completely unaware of where we are because we are experiencing another made up, if you will, dimensional experience of our own imagination. And this experience, what we call the world of form, is very much like that, but it's being manifested, if you will, by all of us because we are all part of the one mind. Well, there is another dimensional shift, we could call it, which is the awakened self, almost like a lucid dream when you're sleeping at night. The awakened self, or the self-realization of your higher self, is the experience of a connection with a different part of your mind, or a part of your mind that's kind of been ignored, clouded over, if you will, by the ego thought system. And when we get in communion and joined with that mind begins to, well, guide us and begins to reveal itself to us as the voice of certainty, the voice of knowing, capital K knowing. And so this first sentence is really, as I read it, it really is saying that the miracle being that shift of perception, so now we're joined with the higher self, which is nothing more than our right mind, compares, so that we could call it also in A Course in Miracles, it's called the Holy Spirit. So we could say joined with the Holy Spirit when we say the miracle, compares what man has made with the higher level creation, accepting what is in accord as true and rejecting the discord as false. All, and this is italicized, aspects of fear are untrue because they do not exist at the higher creative level, and therefore do not exist at all because it's illusion. So to whatever extent a man is willing to submit his beliefs to this test, to that extent are perceptions corrected. So having an experience of dialogue, if you will, with your higher self, communion with your higher self, is really allowing that voice of knowing to help us to see things in a new way. And that's the miracle. It's a sudden shift of perception. It's very, very exciting, by the way, to have that experience. In sorting out the false from the true, the miracle proceeds along the following lines. So now we're on page 16. If perfect love casts out fear, and if fear exists, then there is not perfect love. But only perfect love really exists. If there is fear, it creates a state which does not exist. Believe this, and you will be free. Only God can establish this solution, and this faith is His gift. So that is the end of the first 53 principles of miracles. And section 2 in this first chapter is really a little more than a full page, about a page and a half. And it's distortions of miracle impulses. Now, we've already discovered that miracle impulses are coming from subconscious. Miracle impulses are coming from the subconscious, and revelation impulses are coming from the superconscious. This consciousness that we're experiencing here, we could say as the awakened human in the daily life, is a conscious level that does not inspire or create impulses for miracles or revelation, either one. It is actually conscious of the external world, as an example, and conscious of the impulses from the subconscious and superconscious mind. But it's kind of focused on the outer, wouldn't you say? And so it reacts, if you will, to the world and to the outer, reflection, the appearance. But we could say that When we join with the Holy Spirit, as we've already discussed tonight, that is a sudden shift of perception, and that is the miracle. So distortions of miracle impulses is this final section in chapter 1. Paragraph 102. You are involved in unconscious distortions, which are producing a dense cover over miracle impulses and which make it hard for them to reach consciousness. So it's almost like and this is me just referring a little bit to what this means to me. It's almost like a hard crust on the earth. Imagine a really dry ground when there's been no rain, and the earth itself being very, very hard and dry and difficult to penetrate. That is really kind of the superficial level, if you will, of our unconscious self, our subconscious mind. And that is what we're beginning to soften, right? With the teachings of A Course in Miracles, like rain begins to soften the earth and make it pliable, and we can literally just pull it up with our hands. So the teachings of the Course in Miracles and the practices of A Course in Miracles began to soften that kind of crust over the top, if you will, of our subconscious mind, so that the impulses for miracles, which I want to say are communion with the higher self, a joining in relationship with our brothers and sisters in a higher consciousness and the Holy Spirit, if you will, nothing more than our right mind, we can begin to receive that communication. I guess we could even call it channeling. I think that's fair to say. But here he's referring to it as impulse from the unconscious distortions, which are producing a dense cover over miracle impulses and which make it hard for them to reach consciousness. The nature of any interpersonal relationship is limited or defined by what you want it to do. Relating is a way of achieving an outcome. The danger of defenses lies in their propensity for holding misperceptions rigidly in place. I want to read that one again. The danger of defenses, in other words, do we defend our belief system? Well, of course we do. And we have made a lot of commitment to ideas that we continue to tell ourselves over and over, or that have been handed down to us, often by well-intentioned people, but that doesn't make them true. Many of these ideas born out of the thought system of fear are creating the illusion of a world that really is nonsensical and not our reality at all. So the nature of any interpersonal relationship is limited or defined by what you want it to do. Relating is a way of achieving an outcome. The danger of defenses lies in their propensity for holding misperceptions rigidly in place. All actions which stem from reverse thinking are literally the behavioral expressions of those who know not what they do. Reverse thinking would be the thoughts of the ego mind, literally the reverse of truth. We could get into a few examples, but we'll continue reading for now. All actions which stem from reverse thinking are literally the behavioral expressions of those who know not what they do. A rigid orientation can be extremely reliable, even if it is upside down. What's he saying, right? Well, let me read the next sentence. In fact, the more consistently upside down it is, the more reliable it is. So is he speaking here of the ego thought system as an upside down system? I think so. Is it reliable? Yeah, because it keeps repeating itself. It keeps validating itself. It is an effect, the world, the thought system of the ego mind is making making an imprint on a reflective universe that continues to reflect back, and that validates our belief system. So once you have an idea and a belief, even if it's upside down, right, it can be extremely reliable. You could say that you're a victim, as an example, And if you truly believe that that's your truth, that's an extremely reliable perception, because the world will continue to reflect it back, and you will literally draw to yourself example after example to validate that belief. Paragraph 103. However, validity is still the ultimate goal, which reliability can only serve. Hostility, triumph, vengeance, self-debasement, and all kinds of expressions of lack of love are often very clearly seen in the fantasies which accompany them. He's pointing to all these things as illusions, you see, and the fantasies he's talking about that accompany them, because it's all fantasy. But it is a profound error to imagine that because these fantasies are so frequent, or they occur so reliably, that this implies validity. In other words, there's no real validity to the way the world presents itself. It's a construct of mind, and as he tells us here, we see what we expect to see. If we're holding thoughts of fear, if we're holding thoughts of a separated mind, an individuated self that's a human, a body, and so forth, that those are constructs that are extremely reliable because they manifest, if you will. They appear as our experience. But it is a profound error to imagine that because these fantasies are so frequent or occur so reliably, that this implies their validity. That doesn't make them true. Because it looks like people can be victims in a world of form, doesn't make it our reality or anyone else's reality. We can have experiences of being victimized in our dreams, and many people do, right? I have. We've all had experiences sometimes in dreams that can be horrifying. But what happens when you wake up? Those fantasies are extremely reliable in their presentation, but it doesn't make them true, does it? Because when you wake up in the morning from a nightmare, or in the middle of a night if it wakes you up, the first relief that you have is that it wasn't true, that it wasn't really a valid situation that you were in. You were safe at home in bed, but you were having a dream of an experience that was totally made up. And all of the story, all of the images, the fact that you were a body, that you were anywhere and everywhere but safe at home in bed, none of that was true. And that's what he's referring to here in this conversation. So remember that while validity implies reliability, the relationship is not reversible. You can be wholly reliable and entirely wrong. Let me read that one again. We can have a little fun with that. You can be wholly reliable and entirely wrong. While a reliable instrument does measure something, what use is it unless you discover what the something is? This course, then, will concentrate on validity and let reliability fall naturally into place. You'll find that one of my early teachers in A Course in Miracles used to tell his students all the time that this is the easiest book you'll ever read. That it's really easy to understand. Well, I might take issue with that, but at its base level, it's really about reason and logic. And in the face of real reason and logic about God and us being God's children, extensions of what God is, and understanding what God is on a new level, on a realization of God, where the truth is indisputable because it becomes an experience. And remember, you can begin to experience what you expect to see. When our belief system changes, what we experience in the world absolutely changes. So let's go to 104. The confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses is a major source of perceptual distortion because it induces, rather than straightens out, the basic level confusion which underlies the perception of all those who seek happiness with the instruments of this world. He's saying a lot there in this sentence, so let's read it one more time. The confusion of miracle impulses. And remember, miracle impulses are coming from the subconscious, bubbling up, if you will, coming from the subconscious. With physical impulses, and physical impulses are things that we are, I want to say that are reactions, physical reactions from the thoughts that we're holding, because those thoughts resonate in our bodies, because thoughts are things and they have a vibration, and our body is like the other morning on one of the workbook lessons, I was talking about how the body's kind of like a guitar body, it's got the hole in the middle of it, and it resonates with the strings, and that broadcasts what the vibration is of the strings. Our bodies are kind of like that. Let me just start from the beginning. The confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses is a major source of perceptual distortion, because it induces rather than straightens out the basic level confusion, which underlies the perception of all those who seek happiness with the instruments of this world. It's almost like if we say, if my body's happy, I'm going to just play with this thought for a minute, but if my body is happy, then I'm really happy. In other words, my body determines whether or not I'm happy. So I'm receiving a physical impulse from the body that I'm satiated, or I'm well rested, or well fed, or whatever the case may be. Well, that in fact could be a miracle, right? That the body could be sick, and then there could be a healing of some kind, and we could say, well, that's a miracle, right? Well, he's saying the confusion of miracle impulses and physical impulses is a major source of perceptual distortion, because it induces rather than straightens out level confusion, which underlies the perception of all those who seek happiness with the instruments of this world. Inappropriate physical impulses or misdirected miracle impulses result in conscious guilt if expressed and depression if denied. Inappropriate physical impulses. Could he be talking about sexuality there? I think so, right? Most of my exposure, I'll put it this way, to the institutional religion that I was exposed to younger in my life, or when I was young, I'll put it that way. Physical attraction was considered to be dirty and inappropriate and negative, very, very negative. But what I've come to understand is that sexuality, sex, if you will, is the most powerful creative force in the universe. Write that one down and put that one on your refrigerator, right? Sexual energy is the most powerful creative force in the universe, energy in the universe. Well, so how do we get here, right? I mean, how do we find ourselves incarnated into a three-dimensional, if you're not four-dimensional universe? Because there was a sexual creative force. And so when we are living life, I'll put it this way, when we're living life joined in communion, that's in union and relationship, in unity and relationship with the higher self, right, then even sex is unbelievable, right? Because it's a creative energy, and there's nothing wrong with sex. It is a joining, a physical joining, that is a metaphor, really, for the joining of mind and the higher level. And when the mind is joined at the higher level with our brothers and sisters, there's nothing more intimate than that. That's the most intimate experience we can have, is to be joined with our brothers and sisters at a higher level of consciousness. And so revelation, to me, is is an experience of extreme intimacy with love, right? It's transcending the physical body. But with our brothers and sisters, sexual experiences can be absolutely amazing. I mean, just take us to extreme levels of higher consciousness, really vibrational extremes of mind. Bliss is the word that comes to mind. That is an experience that's available to us when we approach our sexual encounters with others, and obviously the most I'm going to say the most acceptable way for us as humans to be in that type of an intimate relationship is a relationship of character, where we are devoted at that level of intimacy with just one other person, but it's not exclusive to that. But the point is that whoever we are having that relationship with at that level of intimacy, if it's not done through the mind of the ego, which is to get something, but it is done through a joining of spirit, which is always giving, it's an expression of a giving of love. And it really is love making, love creating. And the result of that impulse is miraculous. And so I'll leave it at that. Well, but blissful for sure. Amazing. So inappropriate physical impulses, would be impulses from the ego mind. In other words, for self-satisfaction or lust or something like that. That's inappropriate because that is a separated self looking to get something from somebody else, which is what the ego is always doing. It's looking to use others. And that's not what appropriate sexual activity is in the least. Inappropriate physical impulses or misdirected miracle impulses result in conscious guilt if expressed and depression if denied. All real pleasure comes from doing God's will. This is because not doing it is a denial of self. Denial of error results in projection. Correction of error brings release. Lead us not into temptation means, do not let us deceive ourselves into believing that we can relate in peace to God or to our brothers with anything external. Let's think about that for a minute. Correction of error brings release. Lead us not into temptation means, do not let us deceive ourselves into believing that we can relate in peace to God or to our brothers with anything external. Child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. I believe this is the first time we've encountered this expression, that sentence, the good, the beautiful, and the holy, but we'll be encountering that quite a bit because that is your function. And he's relating and defining it for us here. He says, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not lose sight of this. And for just a moment, I want to turn to today's workbook lesson, just the first sentence. It says, and the lesson for today is my holiness, the term holy, right, is repeating. My holiness blesses the world. And I just want to read the first sentence. Well, maybe the first two. This idea contains the first glimmerings of your true function in the world, or why you are here. Your purpose is to see the world through your own holiness. And back to this last sentence, it's paragraph 105. Child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not lose sight of this. The love of God for a little while must still be expressed through one body to another. The body is a communication device. It's our means of being connected with our brothers and sisters, literally in a physical sense, in a physical world. But we can do that as an elevated self of form. Not the small separated ego self of form, but an elevated self. In other words, joined in union with our true self. The love of God, child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not lose sight of this. The love of God for a little while must still be expressed through one body to another. So what is he saying there? What I'm reading is he is saying, as I was saying earlier, that the love of God, which is the most powerful creative force in the universe, is and can be expressed through sexual experiences, physical impulses, appropriate physical impulses. Nothing at all wrong with sex. It's fantastic. It's blissful. It can lead to enlightenment. So get over it, right? Because the real vision is still so dim. In other words, we can yet see through the eyes of Christ, if you will, until we attain enlightenment. And so, I'll read it again, the love of God must still be expressed through one body to another, because the real vision is still so dim. Everyone can use his body's best by enlarging man's perception so he can see the real vision. The real vision, enlightenment, if you will, realization, self-realization, to real, we're talking about real, R-E-A-L, right? To realize ourselves in the world is to be no longer separate and small and living in fear. This vision is invisible to the physical eye. The ultimate purpose of the body is to render itself unnecessary. Learning to do this is the only real reason for its creation. Very powerful and pretty bizarre. That the body's only real reason for creation, its ultimate purpose, was to render itself unnecessary. So, paragraph 106, fantasies of any kind are distorted forms of thinking, because that always involves twisting perceptions into unreality. Fantasy is a debased form of vision. Vision and revelation are closely related, while fantasy and projection are more closely associated, because both attempt to control external reality according to false internal needs. Twist reality in any way, and any is italicized, and you are perceiving destructively that you are perceiving destructively. Reality was lost through usurpation, which in turn produced tyranny. I told you that you are now restored to your former role in the plan of atonement, but you must still choose freely to devote yourselves to the greater restoration. As long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. Complete restoration, complete is italicized, of the sonship is the only true goal of the miracle-minded. So, if any part of the sonship, he's saying, is still lost in illusion, committed to the belief of the separated ego self in form, right? The devolved self of form, then a part of you and a part of me is lost, or still imprisoned, he's saying. A slave is the term he's actually using, is enslaved in a world of illusion. I want to read it again. As long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. Complete restoration of the sonship is the only true goal of the miracle-minded. No fantasies are true. They are distortions of perception by definition. Another way I want to just kind of bring this out is every dream that you have, no matter how good it is, when you're sleeping at night, no matter how good it is, no matter how, uneventful it is, no matter how bizarre it is, no matter how terrifying it is, it's illusion. And I don't think many of us would have, let me put it that way, too much of an issue with that. Now people say, oh, my dreams are important and my dreams are showing me something. Very, very possible. Everything's showing you something. Everything is here to teach you, because what's it teaching you? It's reflecting you. It's reflecting your belief system. So yeah, dreams can have, quote unquote, value. And I also have come to know that from my own experience, and don't believe a word I say, discover for yourself what your filter system has been causing you to miss out on. I'll put it that way. If you tear down the obstacles to the awareness of the presence of love, you're going to start having different experiences. You're going to have experiences of communication, possibly, most likely, with what you might call angels or guides or the non-physical realm. We've been so conditioned by scary movies and these stories of ghosts and all of these, apparitions and, these just things that, that we say, oh, these are evil things and there's a devil. The devil has been, it's been used for centuries and centuries upon centuries to keep us afraid that we might be possessed, as an example. My wife still tells a story about when she first saw that famous movie, and now I'm sitting here can't think of the name of it, but she, where the young girl was possessed by the devil, right? And her head was spinning around and all that stuff. She was such a young child then. That stayed with her for many, many, many years, and she was horrified of being possessed. Another example is how many, horror movies have we seen where aliens come to the world to destroy us, right? And suddenly, there are these entities outside of us in the universe, and the universe is pretty big, so we better be scared, of these alien creatures that are coming to our earth to destroy us. There's one common theme in all this. Constantly we're being influenced to be afraid. I think I spoke about the coronavirus last week. Constantly we are being influenced to be afraid. Because when you are afraid, you put up your shield, you put up your defenses, you isolate yourself, you cocoon yourself. I was listening to a comedian this week, which was really hilarious. I'll try to get a link to it for you. It was a lot of fun, but he was talking about not so long ago when we were growing up as children. I'll just say baby boomers as an example, right? when we were growing up, that we, when somebody would come over, it was the whole family would, get up and meet them at the door, and it was a celebration. And it's just the neighbor would stop by to say hello, and they were welcomed in and hang out for an hour or two. And there was always a little cake, and coffee. And, this comedian was great in kind of taking us back in time to that experience and his discussion about the family and how we treated anybody that knocked on the door, right? And nowadays, it's like he was talking about the contrast, how like now if somebody knocks on the door, it's like, oh, everybody's like freaking out. Oh, be quiet, you don't want anybody to know we're home. We don't want to be bothered by our neighbors. We don't want to be bothered by our neighbors, really? That's what we've come to see, that because we've been conditioned, we've been influenced to be afraid of each other. And of course, warring with our other neighbors on a global scale, that's just a higher level of that same indoctrination, that same influence to be afraid. When I was younger, we came close to, a nuclear war. And we came close to that again back at the turn of the millennium. It's not, it's not without possibility that we could have destroyed ourselves. But I want to tell you that what we're hearing now, because our consciousness has changed so much, on a global level, our consciousness has changed so much that I think this book has had so much impact in our world already. This curriculum is really beginning to be revealed. You're participating in this conversation, or you wouldn't be hearing the words I'm speaking right now. This is happening. We're shifting. And all of the children that are coming in now, many of those that are incarnating with us now, we're not doing global war anymore. We're not doing that. No. And we're going to start holding our politicians accountable for the deceit and the lies and the manipulation and the false narratives that we have been, almost forced down our throat. And we have come so far because our consciousness has raised so much. If you just have noticed how many inventions and how much more technology is available to us today now so that we can communicate. So we're shining the light on this world of ours. The truth is being revealed by you, literally, because you are part of the manifestation and the attractor field out of your evolution of your consciousness. You may think that what I think doesn't matter. What you think matters more than you ever could have imagined. And what we begin to think collectively together matters way more than we ever could have imagined. The whole message that Jesus had 2,000 years ago was about us and how powerful we were. That's what he taught his disciples. He taught them about their power, their creative energy, their ability to change the world. And 2,000 years in the grand scheme of things, not that long ago. Seriously, not that long ago. But how much have we changed in the last 100 years? How much have we evolved consciously since this book came out and was published in 1975? 75, 76, right around there. Man, how much has changed in that last 55 years, right? Unbelievable. This is 1920, so I guess I need to check my calculator, but I believe, right, that's 45 years ago when it was published. But it began to be transcribed to Helen in 1965. How much has the world changed? How much has your world changed in the last 50 years? If you're that old. But you don't even have to look past the last 20, 25 years, right? So what's going on is that you are the light worker. You are the bringer of salvation. I'm going to return very briefly back to the lesson for today, lesson 37. If you get a chance, go check it out. My holiness blesses the world. He says, it signifies that, he says that you and the world are blessed together. No one loses. Nothing is taken away from anyone. Everyone gains through your holy vision. It signifies the end of sacrifice because it offers everyone his full due. My holiness blesses the world. And he is entitled to everything because it is his birthright as a child of God, a son of God. I just want to take you to the next sentence here. There's no other way in which the idea of sacrifice can be removed from the world's thinking. And then the first sentence of the third paragraph says, your holiness is the salvation of the world. It lets you teach the world that it is one with you, not by preaching to it, not by telling it anything, but merely by your quiet recognition that in your holiness, all things are blessed, all things blessed along with you. Amazing, right? Absolutely amazing. We're so fortunate. It's the reason you came into this incarnation, right? For this time, to be where you are right now in this evolution of consciousness on a global scale, the shifting of the changing of the guard, if you will, the light that you'll bring and are bringing to the world as you withhold judgment, as you join with the rest of us in saying no to the insanity of our past and letting go of the conditioning that this world has been counting on and its ability to impulse us with negative fear. And it's over. It's game over. It's already happening. And we are living truly in a miraculous, which is a sudden shift of perception, a miraculous time. The last paragraph, paragraph 107, we'll finish here with just a few minutes. No fantasies are true. They are distortions of perception by definition, fantasies. They are a means of making false associations and obtaining pleasure from them. Man can do this only because he is creative. But although he can perceive false associations, he can never make them real except to himself. Thinker, we used to say, there's a saying that goes, buyer beware, right? So I want to start a new phrase, right? Here we are. It just came to me. Write it down. We'll write it down together. Thinker beware, right? Thoughts are things. Thinker beware. Man can do this only because he is creative. But although he can perceive false associations, he can never make them real except to himself. Thinker beware. Man believes in what he creates. If he creates miracles, he will be equally strong in his belief in them. A miracle is a sudden shift of perception out of fear into the mind of certainty. The strength of his conviction will then sustain the belief of the miracle receiver. We touch each other. That's what I was saying. We have no idea, we really don't, how amazingly wonderful and holy we are and the impact we can have on this world. The strength of your conviction, I'll read it that way, will sustain the belief of those who receive the miracles that come through you. And they do come through you. And this study is about being miracle ready, about being in the practice of miracles. And fantasies become totally unnecessary as the wholly satisfying nature of reality becomes apparent to both. Both who? You as the miracle worker and the one who receives the blessing of your miracle. A few weeks ago, I shared a story of a personal experience where I was given the gift of realizing a miracle, a sudden shift of perception with someone that I had shared the teachings of this curriculum with. I can't remember what week it was, but it was probably about a month ago. But we're only a few weeks into this year, right? This is only about the fifth or sixth episode of the year since we've been studying this first chapter in the Course in Miracles. So go back and listen to it, and maybe I will, and see if I can pull that out and maybe make a little excerpt from that particular discussion that night. Fantasies become totally unnecessary. And that would be a miracle, right? So next week, we'll pick up the illusion of separation, which is where the whole thing got started, right? We'll probably have some discussions about the Garden of Eden and that metaphor, that story, as we can relate to it. So next week we'll start on page 18, the illusion of separation. I just want to say thank you for being with me tonight, giving me a chance to go through this and spend a little time with my favorite book ever. Really kind of got me started on some of the most amazing spiritual experiences that I could never have imagined. You can't see, the ego tries to control our spiritual journey. It tries to own and control our very next experience, whatever that is, takes responsibility for it. If it's good. If it's not good, it wants to blame somebody else. But I want to close in prayer here with you, and just to say that we have a choice. We have a choice to shift our perception. We have a choice to join in mind with another voice other than the voice of fear. We've talked tonight about how powerful you are. And so I'll leave it at that for now. But let's take a good deep breath, and I'm going to share a prayer with us as we close. I see all things as I would have them be, Father. Perception follows judgment. Having judged, you therefore see what you would look upon. For vision merely serves to offer you what you would have. It is impossible to overlook what you would see and fail to see what you have chosen to behold. How surely, therefore, must the real world come to greet the holy sight of anyone who takes the Holy Spirit's purpose as his goal for seeing, and he cannot fail to look upon what Christ would have him see and share Christ's love for what he looks upon. Father, I have no purpose for today except to look upon a liberated world, set free from all the judgments that I have made. Father, this is your will for me today, and therefore it must be my goal as well. And so it is. One more good deep breath, my brothers and sisters. And again, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's truly been a blessing for me. I hope in some small way that you find value in the work we're doing here together. And I hope you'll share it. You can share this page. You can subscribe to this channel if you will. You can click the bell, and then when I schedule episodes and we produce, and I may start producing other work, and I'll add that to this channel during the week if I can. I just want to share more and hopefully be of some assistance in your awakening, because I know it is absolutely happening for all of us in the here and now. It truly is a wonderful time that we're living in. I feel so blessed to be a part of all of this. I want to give a shout out to my sweet Stephanie and my brother John. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and comments. I just love you all so very, very much. And I'm glad to be a part of this group of mighty companions. God bless each and every one of you. And I look forward to being back with you soon. Next week for sure. And check us out on Facebook.com/Course Mastery.